Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr. Chapter 40, Torn Apart. It's getting dramatic now, guys. Everyone in Castle Black stopped their duties and rushed to the courtyard to witness their arrival, eager to see Lord Stark's heir and bastard. Jon felt a cold shiver go down his spine as he stared at the ice wall erected 700 foot into the sky, making them feel the temperature of the material that it made up of. He bundled himself better into his cloak, a blue cloth in the same hue of winter roses, lined with warm grey fur, and was once again thankful Isla had insisted he take fur-lined gloves with him, rather than his favourite worn pair.
"This place is a disaster," Robb said quietly,
equally bundled in his Stark cloak and rubbing his hands together.
"It's much, much worse than I imagined."
Jon chuckled as he reached into his saddlebag.
"And Isla sent these for you,"
he said, throwing a pair of dark grey fur-lined gloves at him.
"She said that the lack of a lady in Winterfell would certainly mean you were underdressed."
Robb chuckled, but quickly exchanged gloves.
"Thanks. She's right, though."
"She usually is," Jon said matter-of-factly.
"Lesson for life, boys," Adam cut in. "When a woman tells you you are dressed wrong for the weather, you'd better listen. Otherwise you'll be cold or hot or wet. I swear they have an agreement with the mother."
They all laughed.
"Though if they mean only style, feel free to ignore them completely."
The laughter intensified.
"Lord Stark,"
an arrogant voice said in a derisive tone.
"How nice of you to pay us a visit."
They turned around. The speaker was an older man, perhaps around his 50th name day, but not older than his 60th. He had a short-cropped greying hair and a very unpleasant face.
"I couldn't allow for the watch to be—"
But the man snorted even before Robb could finish a polite and diplomatic answer.
"We've no need of your pity here, Stark."
He said the name as if it were a curse.
"Sir Alliser," called a booming voice.
The man descending the staircase to the courtyard, and all the brothers made room for him to pass.
"That is not how we receive guests, is it?"
he asked pointedly, to which the other man only pursed his lips.
"I apologize for my master-at-arms. It is easy to forget our manners up here at the wall. I am Jorah Mormont, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Welcome to Castle Black."
"Thank you, my lord,"
Robb replied. "Yoren spoke of your difficulties, and I came to see how we could help." Of course, of course. Come in, let's go to you inside and near a fireplace. I'm sure you are weary from your travels. I've had my men prepare rooms where you can all freshen up before we speak."
The 6 of them were gathered in the family room in the Tower of the Hand. Ned, Ella, Sansa, Arya, Rickon and Cregan, as they all talked and laughed and spent time as a family. Cregan was splitting his time in his father's, mother's and elder sister's arms, laughing and clapping.
"Lord Edric Dane is here and asked to speak with you, my lord,"
Jory announced after coming into the room. Ella felt her heart pulsing painfully. That did not bode well. Ned nodded and asked the guest to be led into his solar.
"Sansa, will you watch your siblings?"
he asked. "Call for the nurse if you need, sweet," Ella said, standing up and taking the hand her husband offered. They hurried off to his solar, and Ned dismissed the guards as soon as they were inside. "Edric," Ella sighed, "it is good to see you." "Aunt," he greeted her, hugging her bag.
"I'm afraid I don't have good news."
Ella felt her eyes fill with tears, and she bit the trembling lower lip as she bowed. "Lord Edric of House Dane, Lord of Starfall. It suits you, my dear." He smiled sadly.
"I am sorry for your loss, Lord Dane,"
Ned said as he kissed the back of Ella's hand. "Thank you, Lord Stark. And although Aunt Eloria and I agreed that I should come in person, it is not only this news that brings me over. You see, my father has been lingering in bed for a long time, but he has always been concerned with the future of his family. We spoke, on his last days, of his ideas, and I came up with a proposal." "I'll ask for some tea," Ella said. "You boys talk. I will be right back." Edric frowned, but Ned knew Ella. More than tea. She wanted a moment for herself.
"Please, Lord."
"Lord Stark, you're my uncle by marriage. Please, call me Edric." At least when we are in private.
Very well, Ned said with a smile. As long as you afford me the same courtesy. Please, Edric, let's sit.
The boy chuckled. Thank you, Uncle.
Now tell me, what business do you have?
House Dane is a prominent and important house of the kingdoms, Uncle. As such, our marriages must be carefully thought out. After meeting many people, I have to admit, he blushed and cleared his throat. As House Dane has given a daughter to House Stark, I would ask to join our houses for one more generation. I would ask for Lady Sansa's hand in marriage. Adam knocked softly on the door as he entered the library after breakfast.
Yes,
called the elderly voice, heavy with sleep, as if the man had been napping in his chair.
I'm sorry to intrude, Maester, Adam said. I wonder if I may steal a moment of your time. Of course. Come in. You sound different. You're one of the men in Lord Stark's group, I suppose. I am the sworn sword to House Starling. It's a delicate matter, Maester. I'd appreciate discretion.
Maester Aemon raised an eyebrow.
The woes of secrets, he muttered, standing up. You sound like a strong sort. Come, help an old man with his duties.
The knight smiled. The maester was smart and wise, just like Rhaegar had told him. They walked for a while, climbing a rickety staircase to the rookery.
People hate the smell of this place, Aemon said. No one should disturb us, or come to eavesdrop. Good. Because what I have to tell you is both dangerous and happy. Sounds like quite the tale. The maester started cutting up meat. But first, I don't think I have your name.
He chuckled, getting a cleaver of his own.
Right now, the realm knows me as Adam. And what is your name? I am Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, Kingsguard. My Prince Rhaegar held you in high regard. You as well, Maester. Rhaegar was always comforted by your letters and wisdom. Are you here to tell me of my great-grandniece, of Daenerys? That as well. I could tell you all about the lovely woman she is, how much she honours your house, how much of her mother she has in her, and none of her father. But that's not why I seek you out now. Rhaegar sent you a letter from Dorne. He told you about his second marriage, the child the princess carried. He did, agreed the old man with a sigh. I was happy for him, for the babe, obviously, and for how we believed it was the third head of the dragon. His promised prince, born of ice and fire. And then I heard the poor girl died. In childbirth, Adam revealed, and the maester gasped. She died giving birth to Rhaegar's son, Maester. She died, but their heir, their song, survived. To his... She died? And the child? Safe. His brother arrived in time for her last request, Adam said, and Aemon started to frown. She begged that her son was kept safe from the usurper, and Ned Stark wouldn't refuse a beloved sister, Maester Aemon finished, tears filling his eyes as he took a moment to absorb the news and think of the implications. Are you... That's him, down there, isn't it? Lord Stark's alleged bastard. Yes. Oh, the ironies of life! The maester chuckled and sobbed at the same time. That man destroyed my house, murdered even the little children, and usurped a throne he had no rights to. But he still joins them in marriage. He chuckles. The Citadel is sceptical to many things, sir, but I believe in the adage that life always finds a way. He tried to kill the dragons, but the dragons found a way. They did, and already 2 little dragons grow your house, Maester. Aemon smiled. Little children. Oh, the joys of little children. His face then hardened. They are safe, aren't they? That monster. He killed even the little children. But now they are safe, aren't they? They are, Adam assured. And we're making sure they will continue as such. Good, the old man replied, and beneath his rough spun black clothes, despite the trappings of oaths and duty he had laid upon himself,
despite the chain that weighed him down. In that moment, his eyes shone with the fire of dragons. Sansa stared through the looking-glass as Ella brushed her long auburn hair. She was still a bit distracted, had been for a couple of days, and the girl was at a loss as for why. "Ella, are you upset?" The woman blinked, as if coming back to the present. "What? Why would you think that?" "I don't. You've just been different ever since Lord Dane came, and—" She blushed. "I'm just being silly, and it's not even about that," Ella said, putting the brush down. "Is Father going to say yes?" Ella smiled softly. "I think so. Haven't you talked?" "He asked me what I thought," Sansa mumbled with a shrug. The woman pulled her stepdaughter to sit in the armchairs by the window. "And what do you think?" she asked, but Sansa only blushed. "Sweet, you can have an opinion. You know that, right?" "I'm a highborn lady, and my marriage is a matter for my Lord Father to decide." Ella wanted to sigh. That was verbatim what her sceptre had attempted to teach her, before her mother had interrupted, and said in Dawn things worked differently from the Stormlands, where the woman had come from. Obviously she fled from Starfall and these sinful thoughts not much later. "Oh, my sweet, it is true that, in the world we live in, it is ultimately the father's choice. But you can give your opinion, especially when your father asks for it." "But I know nothing of alliances and such." Ella gave her a chastising look. "You're not an empty-headed simpleton, Sansa. Don't play it like you were." The girl sighed. "House Dane is a major house, one of the most important vassals of House Martell, if not the most important. They used to be kings of the Torrentine before Queen Nymeria's arrival, so their family is old and of royal origin. They also have a great military tradition, having borne great warriors, the most recent of which being Sir Arthur Dane, who became a Kingsguard. Their ancestral sword is called Dawn, and unlike the others, it's not made from Valyrian steel, but rather of the core of a fallen star, and that is why the Dane sigil is a sword crossing a fallen star." Ella smiled. And why would such an alliance befit House Stark? Sansa shrugged. "Because it would bring us an ally in Dawn, where the Starks never have any relations." "See, you do know how to think. I'm very relieved. And now you've met Lord Dane, even before he asked for your hand. What do you think of him? Do you think he would make you happy?" Sansa bit her lip, but failed in hiding her smile. "Yes, I do think so. He is very kind and lovely and very honourable. He also said that while he is young, he is a very skilled warrior. He is squiring for Lord Dondarrion, you know." "I had heard, yes," Ella said. "So, would you like the match?" Sansa smiled and nodded. "Good. Something to tell your father over breakfast, then?" Jon and Robb walked the battlements of Castle Black, watching the daily duty of the Black brothers.
"What do you think?" Robb asked. "I think Mormont was too convinced of his words for it to be merely a tale, however ludicrous it sounds." Jon replied, "Unfortunately, I agree. And Mormont doesn't sound like the delusional sort." "No, neither does the Maester." They had arrived at the training yard and stopped to look. Sir Alistair had seemed even more unpleasant and irritated while doing his job, and the recruits looked miserable. "Well, well, well, there are nobles here amongst us today," the Master-at-Arms said, and the two brothers barely held back an eye roll. "Little lordlings who grew up in feather beds and full bellies. I bet none of you scum could beat them." Neither Jon nor Robb gave in to the provocation, and the man started drilling in the practices again. "Gods," Robb said as they watched. "With that man teaching them, they'll never learn how to hold their swords properly." "No," Jon agreed. "They most certainly will not." "Lord Starling," called a steward, coming closer. "Maester Aemon asked for a word." Jon nodded and followed the boy back towards the main area of the castle. "Maester, you wanted to see me?" Then he closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, that was not—" But the man laughed. "I know what you meant, Jon Starling. Although I would like to see you. I called for you as well. I woke up with the urge to do something I haven't done in a few years, and I wondered if you'd accompany me. I have heard through the grapevine you have a volcano in your lands, so you must equally admire the pull of nature. I do, John said as they started walking, and the volcano has recently erupted, so I've learned new levels of respect for the strength of nature.
After being reassured that no one had gotten hurt, Maester Aemon finally stopped before the little clanky elevator.
Are you afraid of heights, John Starling? Haven't been so far, he answered, holding the door open.
The elder smiled as he fumbled his way inside, and the steward turned the gear to make the system work. After they reached the top, the Maester dismissed all the brothers who came snooping, and walked along the wall until he reached an open spot. John gasped as he looked north. The haunted forest stretched for miles and miles, more miles than he could remember right now. The lands of always winter, covered in an eternal blanket of snow.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Maester Aemon asked.
Aye,
John said in an awed whisper.
It's magnificent. You should bring your brother when it's time for sunset, though. That is beauty, if my memory is not betraying me. But I wish to speak with you privately.
John frowned.
Why? Before I took the chain and shed any family ties, do you know who I was?
He asked, and John frowned, but denied.
My father was Maekar, the first of his name. My brother Aegon ruled after him, when I had refused the throne, and he was followed by his son Jaehaerys, who was then followed by his son Aerys, whom they called the Mad King. You're Aemon Targaryen. I am. I also am, I believe, your great-grand-uncle. Give or take a generation. Through marriage, aye, John said, smiling.
Maester Aemon smiled, biting his tongue to keep in a secret he's so eager to share.
I hear Daenerys is a lovely lady, and that she recently given you a son. Aye, and a daughter before that. Oh, she would love to meet you. She thinks she is the last of your house.
Aemon fumbled his hands up John's arm to reach his shoulders. Then his face, holding back his emotion.
It is true that a Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing, John. But she is not alone. She has you and your children. How could she ever be alone?
They were once again gathered in the Lord Commander's solar, John, Robb, Adam, Sam, Gior, Mormont, and Maester Aemon, when a steward brought a raven scroll that had just arrived. The Maester took the scroll and dismissed the man, sighing and giving the scroll to the old bear.
Well, it seems we're having a Kingsguard join us, Mormont said to the astonishment of the entire group. Sir Meryn Trant, he announced.
And Adam had to hold back a huge guffaw.
Has been caught abusing a girl by their Lord Commander, Sir Barristan Selmy, who brought it to the Lord Hand, who then, I imagined, offered the choice of the wall or the gallows. Gior snorted. A Kingsguard! What a disgrace! Couldn't agree more, Lord Commander,
Adam said, thoroughly pleased inside. Getting caught by Barristan had aided the plan, as he was sure Oberyn wouldn't have the patience to wait for exactly this.
It seems nowadays not even the Kingsguard is safe from dishonour. But what of the girl? I'm assuming he was caught before he could do her harm. It only says she was taken into the service of Lady Stark. Well then, she will certainly be fine, John said with a smile. Yes, Adam agreed. My sister is a mother hen. She will make sure the girl is well. A Kingsguard in the Night's Watch, Gior sneered. If it were just after the rebellion to punish a man who had sworn fealty to a losing family, then it would be reasonable. But under these circumstances, it is a shame on Robert Baratheon's name, for the people he chose based on favours and not skill.
Adam wanted to applaud and voice his agreement, but decided to remain silent.
We were talking about wildlings, Lord Commander.
Maester Aemon interrupted the passionate discourse.
The Half-Hand has a report.
Gior pursed his lips, unhappy, but allowed the change of topic anyway.
Aye, it seems half his best team, a total of 7 people, went missing. They've sent patrols, and Nothing. Why are the wildlings attacking the wall, and the brothers in more recent years in the past? Robb asked. Both Mormont and Maester Aemon took a moment of quiet. We don't know, the Lord Commander finally said. We have suspicions, but there have been too many reports for it to be only nursery stories. Is this about the others again? Jon asked. They can't be real. I once thought as much, Lord Starling, Mormont said. I'm not so sure anymore. There was a scratch on the door, one Jon and Robb were very familiar with, so that the eldest stood and opened the door. Grey Wind came in, forcing his way through the chairs and placing a torn-off hand upon the Lord Commander's desk. Lyanna slipped by Mary's attentions again, and Nymeria helped her dodge the guards as the girl once again ran to her parents' chambers. Although she wasn't yet tall enough to open the handle, the door had been left slightly ajar, so she just pushed it open. Nymeria slipped inside, and Lyanna closed the door, the direwolf helping with her superior strength. Then the girl gasped. The door to Papa's solar was open, and there was noise inside. "Papa!" she exclaimed, running that way. "Papa!" But her excitement and smile both died suddenly. Oh, I'm sorry, little Rose, the man said. Your papa is not back yet. Lyanna's lips trembled as she held back tears. I want Papa! He will be back soon, little flower. Where Papa, Davs? Davos smiled, crouching in front of her. The little girl was too young to talk properly, and still hadn't learned to say his name. Your papa went to a very far place to help people. Papa on! Lyanna insisted, now a bit angry, stomping a little foot. I was thinking of going to the Godswood. Do you want to come with me? We can gather some winter roses for your mamma. That seemed to undo the girl's angry frown. That was for mamma? Aye. What do you think of that? We can find flowers for your room and for mamma's room. Maybe some for Aunt Isla as well. How about it? For Uncle Ben! Davos laughed. Very well. Let's find ourselves a very big basket, shall we? So we can bring flowers to everyone in the castle. Lyanna laughed as well, delighted, and extended a little hand that Davos delicately took so they could start the walk to the Godswood. At least, for today, the girl was distracted from missing Jon. Despite the Lord Commander's pleas, Robb was not moved. Adam tried to dissuade him, nearly having a stroke when Jon decided to go as well. But in the end the brothers put their foot down, and they were all crossing the tunnel under Castle Black to resurface beyond the wall. The direwolves led the way, and their trek through the snow was unpleasant, even for those who had grown up in the north. Finally they reached their quarry. That's Othon, Mormont said, staring at one of the corpses. If he died on the way back, he's been dead for at least a fortnight. If he died on the way out, even longer. Sam frowned and sniffed the bodies. What about the smell? He asked, and everyone took a moment to sniff as well. I don't smell anything, Mormont said. What are you talking about, Sam? Jon asked, understanding his friend had a point. Exactly. There is no smell. If they had been dead for a while, there'd be rot, wouldn't there? No one had a reply, or even a comment to that. We should bury them, Robb said. Good luck digging a grave in this weather, boy, Sir Alliser said, in his unpleasant sneer. We should burn them, Yarrick said. The Wildland way. Later, Mormont decided. I want Aemon to have a look at them. Come on, put them on the sled, and let's go back. Even fall is too close for my comfort. The Black brothers followed their orders, and they returned to Castle Black. In the spirit of getting their mind off the disturbing afternoon he had had, Jon wandered around, reaching the courtyard to find a few of the recruits attempting to train, though Sir Alister's stifling presence was nowhere to be seen. He walked over, good-naturedly offering to show them a few moves, and they were all very happy to get some training without their master-at-arms. But Alliser Thorne finally arrived and saw what was happening. Lord Starling wants to take my place now, he jeered. I'd have an easier time teaching a wolf to juggle than you will training this lot. I'd take that wager, Sir Alliser, Jon said. I'd love to see ghosts juggle.
The recruits were stunned and held back their laughter, only at the threat of future retribution. A threat that didn't apply to John. The knight's eyes shone dangerously, and he took a step forward menacingly. Ghost stepped in front of John, but Adam diffused the situation by stepping between all of them.
I believe it's time for supper, is it not?
The recruits scrambled, though they were eager to see the conclusion of the scene. Ghost, to me, John commanded, stepping aside.
Do you need your thug to defend you, Lord Starling?
Adam was unamused.
I'd be careful with my words if I were you, Sir Alistair. You're a fine knight, and I remember watching your skill at tourneys. However, even if you are every bit as talented with a sword as you were in King's Landing, that boy would put you on your back easily.
Sir Alistair's nostrils flared in pure, deep anger, and in a swirl of his cloak he stomped his way across the dining hall.
Bitch,
Adam called. John chuckled.
Are you sure that was wise? He's going to retaliate. Oh, I'm sure he'll try. Come on. I very much am looking forward to a bowl of grub.
John laughed as they too left the training yard. Rob, John and Adam gathered in Rob's room after supper. Sam had bowed out of the meeting, saying he wanted to check on something, and Maester Aemon had been kind enough to allow him to peruse his books.
They must have been too cold and couldn't build a solid fire, Rob insisted. They were frozen solid. After everything we've heard since we got here, that's your idea? Frozen to death?
Adam asked, looking out of the cloudy windows.
Are you telling me you believe in White Walkers?
Rob was incredulous.
It's a nursery story. All nursery stories come from somewhere. The wall was weeping. The brothers said that means it's not cold enough to freeze 2 men to death. Not this close to the castle. So, yes, as ludicrous as it sounds, I think it more likely they fell to White Walkers than froze to death when it's not cold enough. Wildlings are moving south. They're attacking the wall and even crossing into the north. Perhaps, Rob started. That's one more point in favour of the White Walkers, though, John said. If the lands beyond the wall are being haunted by White Walkers, it stands to reason that the wildlings would flee south. Rob exhaled, sitting back in a chair. How can we beat the White Walkers, then? He asked, as if he was humouring them. The answer is in the history books, Adam replied. The first long night might have happened thousands of years ago, but there's enough to be found out about it. The wall was built to keep them out, Rob said. They can't cross it. The shield that guards the realms of men, Adam quoted. That's part of the Night's Watch. Wildlings are men, Rhaegar said. He sighed. Rhaegar said wildlings are going to be the first line of defence against the White Walkers. They're not prepared nor armed for such.
Both John and Rob were shocked. They had grown up with the assumption that Rhaegar Targaryen was better only than his mad father. Even with his father's reassurance that their aunt hadn't been taken or kidnapped or raped, John had grown up believing that the Dragon Prince was no good evil seducer chasing young naive maidens. It was hard to imagine him now as someone with good ideas for the realm. But he'd spent long enough with Adam to know that he wouldn't respect a man like the one the rebellion painted Rhaegar as. Follow him, perhaps, if he were on a bound. But not the respect and even love that flooded his voice every time he spoke of his long-lost friend. We should talk to Mormont, then, John said after several moments of awkward silence. An idea had occurred to him. If we can get the wildlings south, then... Get the wildlings south? Rob exclaimed. What are you talking about? Think about it, Rob. If the White Walkers are really alive and sweeping south, then the wildlings are only going to be praise to them. We can arm and train them. They can be a real line of defence. That is a very wild idea, and more likely to have some lords cursing your name and calling for your head, Rob said. It's late. We should go to bed and wait for the Maester's final report on the bodies. John and Adam left the room, and the knight was melancholic at the same time as he felt pride in John's initial idea. They separated down the hall, each going to their own room. John sat by the fire with Ghost, wishing he were home with Danny, Lyanna, running around after them and little Adam napping in his portable crib that Uncle Benjamin had made. Life on the wall was cold and lonely. Suddenly, Ghost lifted his head and looked at the door, standing up and walked over, scratching at the door to be let out.
Ghost? What is it? Is someone here?
But the direwolf was anxiously scratching on the door, and John stood up, getting his sword belt and going to the door. The winter rose on the pommel glinted against the firelight as he left the room, and followed Ghost through the cold and dark corridors to a room John recognised.
Lord Commander?
He asked, walking in cautiously. He was startled by the door closing in a sudden and loud groan. Ghost started to bark loudly and frantically as he was locked outside the room. John gasped in shock. Standing in front of him was the man Mormont had called Orthon, but he was no longer a corpse on the ground. He was standing, with blue, unseeing eyes, but moving all the same. That moment, John felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Whoa, ho, 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 dramatique. Small thing, I love that little bit with Davos and Lyanna. He's being like another grandpa to her. That's really sweet. And oh boy, so they're at the wall. Things are heating up, or rather, cooling down. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.